Well, welcome back here to the bench. We've got our working on our Carter carburetor project, our AFB, and everything. I told you in the first part of the video that I was probably going to use another one. That other carburetor, too badly corroded, but we did get some parts out of it that we needed. So this is another exact same unit in a little bit better of condition. Everything's out of the parts washer. I wanted to show you a couple of the problems that we found. This carburetor, the step-up pistons are severely worn. I mean, bad wear. But salvaged some out of the junk carburetor. And these metering rods need to be replaced. I have sets of them at home. Didn't bring them in. So if this carburetor was going into service, these would need to be replaced. You can see they're just eaten away just from wear from the spring and from the piston. A good thing is if you find that yours are like this, you just take the cover off the air cleaner. They're accessible from the top real easy. So you could put it back together. The car would run and drive. You could replace them. All these parts, all these metering jets and rods for the AFB are commonly available. These carburetors are still in production, and there's a part number on them so you can see what they're supposed to be. So those are some parts that we found that were bad. Now I'm going to show you what parts from our kit. There's some other parts here that are in the kit for other models of carburetor for various applications. So you might not use everything. Or I pretty much can say you won't use everything that comes in the kit. So, but keep them aside. You might need them for something someday. First main thing that we get in the kit is new needle and seat for the fuel bowls. And the material, all the rubber material is ethanol resistant, so you won't have any troubles that way. So improved design needle and seat, you'll see that they are different, where the needle is just kind of this piece of hex stock. Get new idle needles, new idle needle springs, air cleaner gasket, base gasket, choke gasket, check valve for the accelerator pump gasket, choke to housing gasket, and Venturi gaskets. These here is a different style of Venturi gasket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these old parts out of here. This old stuff. Get it out of the picture so we're not confused by it. Put these aside. One thing that you'll notice here too is I have removed the jets from this carburetor for cleaning. That's something we didn't do when we took the other one apart. Just you want to use either a jet screwdriver or a very close fitting screwdriver. So I think we'll start with the bottom part, the main housing. And idle mixture screws here. And don't go tight. Don't overdo it and damage the seat or the needle. So bring them in. I like to bring them out 1.5. That typically gets things to run. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail I'm going to show how to make the adjustments, but don't use the numbers I'm using. Look them up on the micro-printed chart, or better yet, look them up in your factory service manual, because the adjustments vary depending on the application. But I generally open these half, 1.5. Half, 1.5. Open those 1.5 turns. That usually gets you going. I'm going to see what the recommendation on this one is. When we get to that point, I'll look it up, but I'm going to just get that air idle air brought in and just in place so we don't lose it. We'll look up the setting later in the adjusting mode. Now we'll go ahead and assemble the Venturis. There's the air door. Drops in. Make sure it moves freely. We have the secondary Venturis. Make sure that we get our gasket on and lined up properly here. Get the right one. Make sure everything's as is. We've compared them to the old ones, and then we look at how they fit. Let's see, I have to recall which way. The little notch, the little cutout, goes towards the center of the carburetor by the little bulge here. So those little that indentation is for those protrusions to fit into. Get the right one. These look very similar, but these gaskets look very similar, but they're just very slightly different. Once again, the notch lines up with the protrusion. Take these down gently. Make sure that everything's moving freely still. Take these up evenly. The gasket kind of a little bit oversized, so it kind of gives some resistance as these go down. Air door is working free. And I took, after this came out of the machine, it was out of the cleaning machine, I blew out all the passages on everything, blew everything out with a can carburetor cleaner. So be sure you remember to do that before you start putting it together. Alright, so we're going to install the primary Venturis. The vents go towards the secondaries. These don't need to be too tight. Don't strip anything out. Carburetor rebuilding is a simple job in practice, but you just have to pay attention to what you're doing. If you haven't done it before, take lots of pictures as you take the carburetor apart. So you remember how things will go back together. Like I say, these are many decades. They're similar, but there's little differences. So don't necessarily go by how this one goes together for yours. Yours may be a little bit different. Especially the later ones don't have this air screw here. And then you get into the 70s and you start seeing emission controls on them. So now we have the Venturis in place. Now we will put the accelerator nozzle in. And don't forget your little check valve, your little check needle. It goes into the hole towards the middle of the carburetor. It goes in for that one. Don't forget it or you'll be sorry. You'll be trying to figure out why you don't have an accelerator pump. And all these screws just get kind of gently tightened. Don't go overboard. Remember, you're dealing with aluminum. So I'm just tightening those with just a couple of fingers on the screwdriver, and that's good enough. Now, put these are the primary jets. Those are the secondary. They have numbers on them, so you can write down what they are, so you know where they go. Sits down, primary sit down here. We'll put the jets in for the secondaries. Lay them down in there. The nice thing about these Carter carburetors is if you're playing around with them, unlike the Holly that's got the fuel bowls on the front and back, these here, to get and you have to screw around back in there to do any tuning. These Carters, the metering rods, you can just change just taking the top off the air cleaner, and these jets are not that bad to get to. I've changed them out when the bowls are full of gas. I mean, that's so these are pretty easy to tune. You know, you might want to go up one size on your jets if your area's got lots of ethanol in the fuel, maybe 2 sizes. When you have the alcohol and the gas, you need more fuel, otherwise the engine will run lean. And we'll drop our accelerator pump spring down in there. And I'm just doing a quick double check here. I think we are pretty good in this bottom part of the housing. Slide the baffles in, and we'll set this aside. Now we'll work on the top cover. It's our new gasket, which I'm kind of careful there. It was folded a little bit funny in the box. I like to get it slipped on so that we don't forget and start putting things together in the wrong order. Put the little link through. Slip that down and accelerator pump actuator. To maintain correct needle and seat height, Carter applications use 3 gaskets. Okay, this is a Carter. Always read your little notes that come in stuff. They don't waste the time printing them for nothing, and they wouldn't give you the extra parts if you didn't need them. And these are a little bit different style of needle and seat, but it's not really. These have a rubber insert to seal on the seat. We got the 3 gaskets put on per the instructions. Get these lined up. Okay, now when you drop these in, make sure the red rubber end goes that way. So you have the metal end showing. You always want to make sure you've got your gasket on there so that you don't have, because once you put the floats on, then the gasket is not able to be installed. Now we have to check the float height. And what I like to do is get back here on the chart, get the numbers off the chart, and write them in on the instructions so that we know we're not confused. We can take our time, look things up, and know that everything's in order. So we are looking for 5/16. And of course this is with the gasket in place. So we need to get that float to drop just a little bit. About 1/8 of an inch high. Don't apply pressure to the needle and seat when you're making adjustments. Make the adjustments without putting force on it, because you'll damage it. We went a little bit too far. So I'm lifting off the valve. Okay. Another 5/16 on that side. And these numbers will vary depending on the carburetor and application. So don't do what I'm doing. Do what the book says is proper for your application. Just like torque specifications. Your application may be different than mine. Okay, got that side just like that. Then we have the float drop, 23-30 seconds. Boy, it's pretty close. I'd say that's good. This setting shouldn't change if it was right before. Now this one's way off for float drop. Give it a shot on that one. So this setting is sometimes easier made. Pulling that out, giving this tab a little bend. We'll get it close and we'll double check the previous setting. A little bit too much. About 18. It's a little tedious at times. We're getting closer. Hard to show you guys. Okay, we got our 23 there now. We'll double check our 5/16 on this side since we were bending on things, and we're good. So now that we have everything on the top done, we bring the bottom in and we bring the two parts together. Just like that. Make sure everything is down properly. And we have our multitude of screws. Longest one goes there. And there's two long ones on this corner, because this corner has on this carburetor, I removed it earlier to make it more standard looking. This had the fast idle for the air conditioning. This was off an air conditioning car. This is a slightly longer one that goes in there. The sample carburetor that we disassembled, only these two screws were at different lengths. All the ones on the perimeter were the same. So just bringing these snug. We don't want to warp the housing. We want to make sure everything is operating freely still. Always check as you're going. Easier to fix a mistake now, and it's real easy to get something in the wrong location. I know some guys will say, why didn't you clean that up better? You know, put the screws in, get all the little bits of corrosion off of them. Well, I fix up people's cars to drive. Doing these show cars for John is a little bit out of what I normally do. So something like this is just a general demonstration. It may not go to the effort of all the details. It all depends on your application. Got a pretty original looking engine room. You put a nicely plated factory new looking carburetor on it, it's going to look a little bit out of place. So do the job as you see fit for your application. Now we're going to put the step up pistons in. We're going to use these in a little bit better shape. Like I say, these metering rods need to be replaced, but I'm showing you how it goes together. and showing you what you might find when you take your carburetor apart. But luckily for these are available. We don't stock them, but just making sure that fits in there good. That fits right. Making sure these pistons fit the bores okay, since these bores are a bit worn. But any hot rod shop, your local speed shop, would have rods and jets for these. So just want to make sure that, yeah. So now we put the springs in like that. Put the rod in. Gotta make sure the tip of the rod lines up with the hole in the housing. I just kind of find that if you jiggle them a little bit, and once they line up, if you don't disturb them, they stay lined up pretty good. Okay, now it's time to put the choke housing on. New little gasket that goes in there. And take a moment to check to make sure that that gasket hasn't fallen out, because it will try to do that on you. I get some cleaner and spray in there. It's a little bit stiff. So we've got the choke housing mounted back up. Now we have to put the cover plate in there, and you'll know it's the right way when that can move through the arc. Gasket and outer housing. See the tab on the spring. This is a thermostatic spring. If you watch our video on putting the electric choke in the 64, you can see actually the spring work when it's electrically heated. This is heated through a heat stove. You can swap out and put an electric choke on one of these if you want to. Any of the Carter or Edelbrock. And we even supply you one if you needed it. You just want to make sure you block that off, or you'll have a minor vacuum leak. So you can switch this to electric. So I like to put these together with this kind of facing down, while I get all this oriented, because it's somewhat awkward. Well, it's more than somewhat awkward at times. It's easier if you set it in and start that one first. Okay, now that those are there, you can bring it up, and the arm, you'll see it on the above shot, that arm moves now, and see that's tensioned by the spring. We have our alignment mark here. Put that, and your instructions and your manual will give you your starting point. I'm putting it just right on the neutral center point for this. Like I say, I'm going to show you where the adjustments are made, and then you will make them appropriate to your application. Because you might be watching this to put this carburetor on, I don't know, a Mercury. I think they used them. Studebaker trucks. So you may not be a GM guy, you might be a Chrysler guy. They use these for years. So now we can start finalizing the linkages, putting them back on. This is the choke mechanism to the choke flap. The long side is horizontal. The short side goes down there. You can see how that works. And they are very kind and give extra clips. So save those clips. You might need them someday. That one is in. That one is in. Now the accelerator pump linkage, we didn't disconnect it down below. For this application, it goes into that hole, into the B, or the center hole for this car. And this might have a different clip on your application. These changed over the years, how they retain this. So now you can see the accelerator pump works with the throttle. Finally, the last linkage to go in is the fast idle linkage. So it connects up here to the choke. And what it does is it pulls this weight. So when you start the car cold and you give it that pump or two on the throttle and the choke sets, it pulls this up. And that's fast idle, the set screws there. And then as the motor warms up, the throttle is allowed to close more. This part has a little nub on it. You line the nub up with the hole, with the notch, bring it up, just like that. Okay, now on to the adjustments. You have a accelerator linkage adjustment. You gotta make tighten that up a little too soon. Actually, I like to have this loose. I want this off of here, off the fast idle cam. So we want to look at accelerator pump, and we're going to be measuring to the top of the housing from the link, and that setting is 15-30 seconds. So that should be the stroke. Okay, most of these should be okay as long as the linkages haven't been bent. That's why when you're taking them apart, you're careful. So that's your pump adjustment. Then we have to do fast idle, which you put the screw on the index mark, and then it's going to give you a measurement to measure how far open the primary is open. This one here is 23 thousandths. What I use, I have a set of carburetor gauges for the old one barrel Carter. Some of them will work on these, but you align on the mark, let the throttle be closed against it, and you measure in here how far open the throttle is. A piece of small wire or a small drill bit, not the cutting end of the drill bit, the shank end of it. You can use that as a gauge, but these are done with a wire gauge. So that's going to set your maximum fast idle. To make that adjustment, you bend here. You also have your choke you adjust for here, like I said when I initially put it together. These don't have a whole lot to them. If your accelerator pump throw isn't correct, you adjust the bend here. But like I say, that these should all be okay as long as the carburetor hasn't been beat up. It's just something to verify. So that's the basics of the Carter AFB. Kind of see how it works in there, and it's not complicated per se. You just have to pay attention to how it comes apart and just remember how to put it back together correctly. So hopefully that helps you guys out. If you need a kit, we stock many for many different models, and so we probably have what you need. So thanks for watching.
At Caddy Daddy Presents, it's all about giving back. Please enjoy the video of the Boys and Girls Clubs of St. Helena and Calistoga. can donate by clicking the link in the video description.